So here I was prepping to record a podcast tonight, which would be Sunday night, and Jeff Passan hits us with an all-caps breaking that Josh Naylor has agreed to a 5-year deal with the Mariners. Now you guys know this is a tradition on this podcast, a long-standing tradition that feels like when I record, things happen, usually afterwards, most of the time afterwards, and it frustrates me to no end every time that happens, particularly in the off-season. But this is perfect. It is perfect timing. It was like an hour-ish before I was going to record. Beautiful timing. Excellent. So Josh Naylor, 5 years. Reported, I'm recording this so soon, I don't even have the number. Reported to be 90 to 100 million, which feeds pretty much into what the projection was for him. I had it written down here. MLB trade rumors had him at 5 for 90. And so this kind of hits exactly that. If it's 90, I'd be surprised. I feel like my guess was going to be 5 for 100, which is just over what? What is that? 20? That's not just over 19. That is 20 on the dot. I can do math. But it would have been 18 a year if it was 5 for 90. But 20 a year seems incredibly reasonable. Guy's 28. I really love the move. And this puts me in a pretty good mood. I was going to enter this podcast not in a bad mood, but in a dreading the constraints that this team puts on themselves mood. But Josh Naylor, Mariner. So welcome back to the Castball Podcast. It's episode 124. Had to open with that. I was not planning on opening with that, but this is going to be mostly a off-season, not a primer, well, kind of a primer, but more just a chat. Just a general off-season chat. Like, what do the 2026 Mariners need? What do they vitally need? What is like the chatter around their budget? What trades could they make? Maybe should they make? What free agents fit their needs? And all of that. I was briefly going to touch on awards too. Award voting happened. And then the Naylor news was announced. So I'll talk about it more when I get to the budget talk of this episode. But I needed to open with that. I'm pretty psyched. That was kind of the one thing they needed to do this offseason. Like, I think they should do a lot of other things personally, but that was the biggest domino that needed to fall. Like, that felt inevitable, and the team was very open when the offseason began, like right when the season was over. Like, yeah, we love Naylor. Jerry DiPoto came out and said it's a priority for them to get signed. The fact that they did this on November 16th, the first major signing of the offseason, before Thanksgiving, well before Thanksgiving, it's a breath of fresh air, frankly, that they got this done this early. Thankfully, a lot of my prep for this episode was surrounding, I was operating under the assumption that they were going to sign Naylor to basically this contract. The 5 years, 100-ish million is kind of what is exactly that I thought they were going to do. So it doesn't throw a wrench in my plans at all. It just kind of gets me going, which is great. But let's get into what initially was going to be the start of this episode. Cal didn't win MVP. The MVP vote happened. Cal did not win. It was very close, though. It was very close. I feel like it was closer than a lot of people expected. I think in September, I thought the pendulum had swung Cal's way, and maybe it did. And then I think as October, November were going on, as the Mariners were out of the playoffs, the World Series was wrapping up, it looked like everything was trending in a Judge direction. But 17-13 is exceptionally close for MVP. I really did think the narrative was going to win out here for Cal. I really thought it was going to. I felt like he was going to win on some things he did better, but mostly Judge is a better player, but just Cal being a catcher and everything, I really thought the narrative was going to overpower it. But it did not. And I think this signals kind of how far the BBWAA has come in the past couple decades. I feel like since the turn of the century, they've come such a far way in how they evaluate these things with stats and everything. Because 15 years ago and on, Cal probably wins this just because it's he's a catcher He's a catcher who played that much. He played that many games. He hit 60 home runs, led his team to a division title. I feel like that would have been somewhat of a simple choice for voters, like back in the day, right? Then again, I mean, he did hit like 240, and Judge hit 330, so batting average was always weighed pretty heavily back in the day too. But why I think it says a lot about the current writers and just the game is that I think the more you look into the stats, the more it favors Judge, because he's just an incredible baseball player. He's one of the greatest players we've ever seen. And I think as the offseason kind of started and more writers were not focusing on the baseball happening, but were focusing on the awards and reading into it, and the more you read into it, I think the more you're going to favor Judge, if that makes sense, right? Like, the more you think about it, the more you're like, no, Judge was just better. There's less thinking of like who's more valuable to the team. You know, there's always that conversation where it's like maybe like it's hard to quantify everything a catcher does just in stats. I think that was a fair argument. But like the F WAR is really close. Like Baseball Reference WAR is not serious for catchers because it doesn't include framing. So that's not as close. But the F WAR was close enough too. When you just look at the WAR, and that's a good starting place, but you obviously need to look elsewhere. And you try to quantify their value with a stat like that. I mean, you generally give like a 1.5 WAR-ish like margin for error when assessing players like this. Like, Judge's WAR is not that much more than Cal's. And I'm not coping. That's usually generally how a lot of people look at WAR. It's not like you can just look at it and say, yeah, he was 1 win better. It's like there is a margin of error with these stats. It's not a perfect stat. But the more you look into Judge, the more you could talk yourself into him, I think. I could have probably talked myself into voting for Judge if I kept looking at it this entire month and I was a voter. And I don't think it's a wrong decision. I think everyone on the internet is pretty dramatic about things on both sides, frankly. I think that it was close at all tells you how worthy both these players were and how there wasn't really a wrong choice. I love Cal. I would have voted for him because I am biased and I'm a Mariners fan. And if it upsets you that I'm saying that Judge is a good player and also deserved to win, fine. Sure. This isn't, I'm not a homer as much to say like this was a robbery of Cal Raleigh. Like it simply was not. This was a really tough choice. I mean, imagine how Bobby Witt feels, losing last year to Judge. And he probably should have lost last year to Judge. Like that's just how the cookie crumbles sometimes. But I am curious if they allowed more than 30 people to vote, what would have happened? Like maybe Judge wins by more at that point, possibly. After thinking about and looking at like the Cy Young votes and every other vote, why is it just 30 BBWAA members? I feel like more than 30 should vote. Not all of the BBWAA members, because there are so many in the New York chapter that you don't want them overpowering every vote, even though there's a lot of mostly probably unbiased New York BBWA people. I just feel like more than 30 should vote for these awards, frankly. But I think when we look back on this season, I think a lot of people have pointed this out, that this was the season of Cal Raleigh, and I think it still is. It's a notch in Aaron Judge cap when he goes into the Hall of Fame with another MVP. Incredible player. But I think this season will be remembered more from what Cal did, just because he broke so many records for his position. And Judge, it was kind of business as usual, but his business as usual is just like an absolutely like the best right-handed hitter of all time, probably. We're looking at it. Cal not winning doesn't diminish anything that he did this year either. But other awards, Dan didn't win Manager of the Year. Not shocking. My theory for why Dan and Cal both didn't win is that the voters clearly saw their performances in the Virginia Mason Franciscan Health ads that they were running on Root Sports all year. And I just don't think they were convinced by their performance in that. So I think this offseason, which is fair, I'll say they were pretty flat in those advertisements. They didn't really entice me to choose Virginia Mason Franciscan Health for my health needs. So I think this offseason it should probably be a mandatory acting class for both of them so they can win some awards next year. Brian Wu got 5th in Cy Young, which is pretty cool. Julio got 6th in MVP, which is also pretty cool. And has some contract incentive implications as well. Go to my Twitter account, or a couple other people tweeted out what this means. I don't want to get into it, but good for him. 6th in MVP, good ball player. All right, enough of awards. I like the awards. I think awards are cool in some ways. I do think the Manager of the Year award is like incredibly stupid for baseball and kind of silly, but I digress. It is time to perform the acts of naming dudes and talking about if they make sense for the Mariners. Let me sip my tea. First thing first, though, that was really, really hot. I should not have drank that. We have a potential work stoppage after next season. I think I've talked about this already. I think everyone else has talked about it and is going to talk about it. It's going to loom large, like a specter of doom, over the sport for the next 11 months. But this could and probably will maybe affect some contracts given out this offseason. I would guess not even like the Naylor won 5 years, like guys who were going to get like Kyle Tucker and guys who were going to get like 5+ years, probably not affects them too much. But looking at like a Jorge Polanco, like guys who are looking for a 1 to 3 year commitment somewhere, I feel like that could affect it for sure. Those shorter term contracts, maybe you ask for a 1 year deal with a lot of money next year, or you ask for a 3 year deal for less money just so you have a contract you know you're going to come back to when the lockout stops, if the lockout happens. But I don't want to talk about that today really or dwell on it. All we can really do is speculate. I did just want to mention it because as the offseason rolls on, something to watch for sure. But the only way we really know if it'll affect deals is if it in fact does and is reported on. So we'll probably hear a lot about the union and league, like in the league having meetings about this because nobody wants a work stoppage really. But the owners want a salary cap, and I think the union is strong enough to resist it, but we'll see. So what do the 2026 Mariners do this offseason to try and top what they did on the field in 2025 for the next season? I mean, I think it's fairly obvious. I wrote down Josh Naylor, and bada boom, bada bing, look at that. Signed. Before I even get into the needs, like I'll be talking budget shortly, and the Naylor thing doesn't even affect this. I just always need to get this off my chest so people know where I stand on how this team operates and how most teams operate. And it's with cowardice to not spend more money. That is always where I stand on this. The current Seattle Mariners team, where they're at in their contention window, like a team that just went to Game 7 of the ALCS, has numerous team control years left for their young stars on both the offense and the pitching side. They should be reaching at like the very top end of the market to improve the team where they need to. Now, they just did at the first baseman market, and that was expected, and we give them kudos for that. But they probably shouldn't do that on the starting pitching side. That doesn't really make sense, reaching at the top of the market trade-wise or free agency-wise there. But hitting-wise, relief pitching-wise, they 100% should be shopping at like the top end for guys. They should be trying to sign Kyle Tucker, trying to sign Alex Bregman, Edwin Diaz, Robert Suarez, like these guys who are leaders in their categories hitting the free agent market. They should be shopping for them, but they won't. They simply won't be shopping for those guys. It'd be a shock if I heard that the Mariners were in on any of those four at all. Like, who the feels most obvious of that group is maybe Bregman, but still, that's the most obvious guy they would be in on in a group that they won't be in on at all. They'll shop, like I said, at the top of the first baseman market. They already did. I had written that down already. But it will frustrate me, inevitably frustrate me, when they don't try for like Kyle Tucker at all. I'm not saying they absolutely need to sign him. at all. But they should be trying. They can afford him. Every team in Major League Baseball could afford him. If that sounds crazy to you, it shouldn't sound crazy to you. I get why it does. But I promise you, if you threw Juan Soto's contract onto every single team in baseball right now, there is not a single team that would go out of business. Let me tell you. Like Kyle Tucker would probably take up most of the Mariners' offseason budget. But therein lies the problem, right? I needed to say that. It will never not frustrate me when looking at this team that they don't shop at the top end of the hitting market in places they need. It, like when Shohei Ohtani came around, I'm not saying they could have signed him over the Dodgers, but just an offer at all. Something. Like they can do it. They can afford this. They can afford this. They can afford to get Kyle Tucker and Naylor right now. Like with the means that they have, and you look at their like reported revenues and the percentage they're putting towards payroll, they can absolutely afford it. And then you can just look at the background of the ownership group, and it's just they're all mega rich people that can pay for this. And so I'm not going to harp on it anymore. I'm sure I will at another offseason podcast. But that's always where I stand on things like this. And I'm really happy about Naylor. But it's just I don't like going to the offseason. As a team, that's not like a dirt poor or a well-known dirt poor team in baseball like the A's, or the Reds even, or the Rays. You're a team with such a unique market and plenty of money and a great foundation in a roster, and they just will never. I would like to go in the offseason being like, yeah, I truly believe they might sign Kyle Tucker. I have zero belief that they'll do that. As for this podcast, again, I'll say that time and time again. I will criticize owners constantly. But then I'll also look at like this pod through a realistic lens of what the Mariners might do given the constraints. The constraints that I disdain, first of all. So what do the Mariners need? What do they need? Josh Naylor was number one on my needs list. I wrote down, not a first baseman. They don't need a first baseman. They need Josh Naylor specifically, is what I wrote down. He was pivotal to the championship series run last season. I think everyone loved him. They glopped onto him immediately. He glopped onto the fan base. He was wearing Kraken jerseys. They don't call them jerseys, do they? Call them sweaters in hockey. He was wearing those to the game. He was not only really good on the field, he was just a huge part of the culture immediately. Team made it a priority to bring him back, and they did, which is awesome. Like, genuinely a great thing. A phenomenal start to this offseason. Like, I don't think their offseason can't get terrible. Like, this offseason is already better than the last two. Just by bringing back Naylor. It's already an improvement on what they did the last two off seasons, and I feel very confident in saying that. They were coming into this winter with pretty much the same needs as last year. Like, the infield corners were pretty vital. They have first base now, which is massive because there wasn't an alternative within the org to play first base. Like, you can at least convince yourself at third base Ben Williamson could win a Gold Glove, and maybe that's about it. But there's no one you can even say anything about at first base. So Naylor was rightfully the number one guy that needed to bring back. I think on top of the corners and the infield, pitching depth, I think, is a concern. That and another late inning bullpen arm, probably in need of a left-handed reliever as well. I mean, you could kill two birds with one stone there and get a lefty reliever who's also a leverage guy. Throwing it out there right now. But if the offseason reaches a trading for Brendan Donovan point, I think you would need to get Jojo Romero included in that deal. That is 100% a deal I am willing to do for some solid prospects for those two guys. But I think first and third is more important. Now I think third, and is infield. I feel like we'll say third base, second base is somewhat important. I don't know if this is a popular take among Mariners fans right now, but I'm fine with the current outfield. Like, I don't think it should necessarily be a priority. Like, if I was running the team, if I own the team, which means I'm filthy rich, I'm signing Kyle Tucker at all costs because I'm different. And then I'm just trading Canzone and Luke Raley, sure, for something else. And Kyle Tucker's my full-time right fielder with Victor Robles on the bench. But, that's a perfect world. I do think it's not an especially strong position. I am okay still with Randy in left. He had a overall good season last year. The last 2 months were pretty ugly, but everything before that was great, was awesome. And that's just sometimes how someone's season is constructed. Right field is just it's not a mess, but I do think one of Canzone and Raley will be traded this offseason and probably should be. I don't really see an ideal opening day roster with both of them on it. They occupy the same position. They're both lefties. Naylor's back too, so Raley's flexibility at first is only like emergency flexibility if Naylor's hurt. Otherwise, Raley's not going to play first very often, where he would be worth a roster spot if you hadn't signed Josh Naylor or you had a right-handed first baseman. Robles as your fourth outfielder is fine with me going to next season. I don't think they need to touch that. His last season, he was incredible. He got hurt and was out most of the year. I still think he's a fine option, fine defensive replacement. He's not expensive. I don't think they need to tinker with Robles. I'm happy with Canzone Robles as a platoon in right field if they really do address a little bit of pitching and then the rest of the infield after Naylor. Canzone showed me enough last season to where I'm fine holding on to him. Unless a deal comes along, and we'll talk about this, in a trade where maybe you can upgrade in right field and get rid of Canzone and just hope he doesn't become Barry Bonds somewhere else. Or you get rid of Raley, like a Stephen Kwan, I'd be fine with getting rid of those guys and Stephen Kwan being my everyday right fielder. Wouldn't hate that. I also do think they don't need a Dylan Moore replacement, but they need to replace the idea of Dylan Moore, if you get what I'm saying. I don't think like a utility man should be a priority over everything else I just said. Willie Castro's on the market. That's something. He's really like the only like utility man worth putting a little bit of money down on, because there's not like a ton of just good utility men hitting the market year over year. He wouldn't be that expensive. Dreadful run after getting traded to the Cubs. I still would have liked him on the Mariners, but I still like him on the Mariners. He would be a useful player. They can get positions and fill positions via trade to a lot of options. They just need to replace positional versatility on their bench that they lost with Dylan Moore. I think if you go out and get certain players to fit certain needs, you don't need like a sole utility man. Like, you can build your team to where you don't need a utility man to play a bunch of positions. Like, you can have a good bench infielder and then 5 guys who can play the outfield. Like, I guess Miles Mastrobuoni still exists. He can kind of fill that role in some capacity. But the bench is something they do need. The team, I feel like, does need just more quality on the margins, and that can come from an internal development. It's not a case of needing a free agent to fill that role. That would be a nice luxury to get Willie Castro. I mean, that's if he gets signed for $9 million for 1 year, maybe that's too rich for the Mariners' blood because, again, they're cowards. But for a serious baseball organization like the Dodgers or something, they can afford to do that deal, even though maybe he's not worth $9 million. He might be worth $9 million on positional versatility alone. Some of it, again, this type of, not utility, but just flexibility on the bench. Some of this could be filled by like Cole Young, just improving as a player. Maybe just becoming the full-time second baseman would be helpful. Calling up Colt Emerson, perhaps, to play third base or even shortstop at some point. Maybe Leo Rivas really sticks as a bench infielder who isn't a net negative at the plate and is just kind of the bench infielder and has a valuable season next year. Maybe these things can happen internally. They just kind of have to show me they can develop players like that internally with some regularity before I'm confident saying they should like bank on that internal development rather than going to outside help. So their needs are pretty simple. It's just now, what are the constraints? What are they working with? Their reported budget is depressing to me. There's been a lot of chatter about it and like what their payroll is going to look like next season. They had a decent amount of money coming off the books, like Garver's off the books, Naylor, Gino, Ferguson. Their remaining contracts were coming off the books, and now Naylor's back with more money, but I'll talk about that. Polanco was coming off the books too. He wasn't making like a ton, but altogether those guys were 30-ish million, I think, something like that. There were early offseason reports that their starting payroll for 2026 is going to be roughly $166 million. That's like they're shooting for that, which is basically the 2025 end of season payroll plus a couple arbitration increases that they'll have. So the estimates for their current squad payroll in 2026, this is without Naylor, is around $132 million. So with Naylor, I'm not doing that math yet because I don't have to, and I wrote all these down before he got signed. So basically, pre-Naylor, that leaves roughly $34 million for free agents and potential trade acquisitions, which is pretty cowardly if you ask me. Like, frankly, that's not that much money. There's a lot of chatter in those articles that says there's flexibility with that number, right? And for the deadline especially, meaning that they would be likely to add more payroll at the deadline, which, shocking, they are usually open to doing that. But again, that is one of my main critiques of how they go about this. Stop building a team and looking at deadline acquisitions as like an absolute going into the year. You should be building the best possible team you can for opening day. And the deadline should be for like filling the holes in your ship that appear as the season progresses. Injuries, underperformance, what have you. A guy gets scurvy, things happen. I gotta say this, knowing how much money this ownership has, the revenue they've made the past few years, especially last season with that postseason bump, which should have been pretty freaking substantial for this team considering all the merch they probably sold. They had the maximum number of home games that they could have played in the DS and the CS. I think they should be at a $200 million payroll to start next season. If you gasp at that, they'll be fine. I promise you they could run a $200, $220, $230 million payroll next season, and they'd be perfectly fine. They would be fine. No one would die. No one would run out of money. The team wouldn't have to be sold. I'm telling you they could do that. They won't. But if they really wanted to put themselves in the best position to win a World Series in 2026, they'd be putting their nuts on the table and getting close to 200. But we know that's not really necessarily a priority of ownership. So, like, what can you do? Looking at, like, the $30 million number, Naylor and Polanco, if you just brought those guys back, that pretty much eats all of the budget. Naylor is looking like he's getting $20 million a year. And then Polanco is projected for 3 for 42. And obviously it might be different, but let's just say that. Let's say Naylor's 5 for 100, Polanco's 3 for 42, and they bring them both back. That is exactly the number I just said, $34 million for their budget. So that's it. That's done. So, off-season over. They bring back Polanco next season, and then donezo. You just do arbitration and some non-tenders, and bada bing, bada boom, you're chilling for next season. We do have Jerry DiPobo as a Pobo, Jerry DiPobo. So trading will be done. We know this. He has already made 2 trades this offseason. He just also made a trade 10 minutes after the Naylor deal was announced. A reliever from the Dodgers, Robinson Ortiz, after making a trade with the Rays 11 days ago for Cole Wilcox, another pitcher. Trades with the Rays and the Dodgers to kick off the offseason. It's perfect. Those are the top 2 teams, the Rays and the Dodgers, the ones he's made the most trades with in his tenure with the Mariners, so it's kind of perfect. And they do have some salaries that they could wheel and deal, maybe. That frees up some money for them to spend, gives them some more flexibility maybe to go out and spend a little bit more money, or maybe even acquire some money in a trade. There's 2 in particular, really, that many people are saying they should trade. Many people on the internet, I will say. And no, it's not Randy or Rosarena. I think some people have mentioned that. I don't know. I can't see them trading Randy. I don't know how they could justify doing that and justify how they'd replace his production in that position. I don't know what they would be doing. There's a possibility, maybe they trade Logan Gilbert or George Kirby in a deal. They're both set for some ARB increases and we'll be making some good money next year. But no, the 2 I'm talking about, you can probably assume, are J.P. Crawford and Luis Castillo. And I get it. I get why people are saying to try to trade them. I fear that a lot of people are going about their offseason thinking on the internet with an MLB The Show brain, if you know what I'm saying. Where you can kind of make any trade you want in that game if you just know how the game works at all. And offloading salaries is really easy to do. Trading either of I implore these people to get on out of the park baseball. Go to the Mariners and try to trade either one of those guys for any players of value, straight up. I implore you to do that. You'd find it very difficult. And I think they're going to find it very difficult in real life to get good value out of either of those guys other than it just being a salary dump. And I think both of those guys are better than a salary dump. If you salary dump those guys, I would be pretty goddamn angry unless it followed up immediately with paying a really good player to fill that position. If they salary dumped Luis Castillo and then they went out and traded for Tarek Skubal, sure, I wouldn't be that angry. But can you see how unrealistic that would be? J.P. Crawford makes $12 million next season. Castillo makes $24 next season and in 2027. He has that vesting option in 2028. I don't know. It doesn't seem like it'd be easy to trade either of these guys at all. Drinking more of my tea. And for Castillo, you are then down an arm if you traded him and have to replace him in the rotation. They already have some pitching depth issues, as I said. And I think Luis Castillo is maximizing his production on the baseball field at this current moment in his career as a Mariner, pitching half the time in Seattle. It's very good for him, and I think that makes him a little bit more valuable on the Mariners than every other team, pretty much. And I think it pushes him towards that contract right now being worth it. I think we'll look back on say it's worth it, and it's going to age like a veteran pitching contract will normally age. I think when they initially traded for him and then extended him, those first few years, they're getting a lot. And then now we're seeing him age gracefully into the last couple years of the deal And maybe he's not worth $24 million, but that's the point of contracts sometimes. 24 is not like a ton of money for a good pitcher. It's certainly less than he'd probably get on the open market right now, but I think you'd find it very hard to get any sort of value for trading him unless you attached some sort of prospects to him, or you took on another salary from another team to match, and you think you'd get better value from that veteran than Luis Castillo. And then it's like, I don't think they're that good at their jobs to do that. So I don't know about trading Luis. I feel like I said this last offseason. I feel like it's way more likely to trade the other 4 guys before they trade Luis, just because of tradability. And then JP, I feel like, comes with the same issues of who is actually going to want to do a trade for JP Crawford in the year 2026 going into that year. I don't know what you'd want out of him for $12 million next season. It's not like a ton of money for a shortstop, but I mean, he's fine at the plate. He's not an amazing shortstop anymore. You can't release him. Like, that would be really stupid. You still would have to pay the money. He had a very JP year at the plate. In the field, I really don't like him at shortstop anymore. I can't watch him throw to first anymore. Man, I got really tired of it last season. He just doesn't even look like he'd make that throw routinely anymore. Sometimes, though, you just got to roll with the vet because that is your option, and sometimes that's just how it works. In a perfect world, they would trade JP and get the money off the books and then sign a cool third baseman and then promote Colt Emerson, and he'd be an amazing prospect from the jump in Major League Baseball. But that feels like the 99th percentile outcome of what could happen from this offseason. Like, Colt appears to be almost ready. Maybe he even is ready. Maybe he's proving me wrong and he's ready already, right now, even though I don't think he is. Like, the prospect evaluators have loved the improvements he's made. He had a cup of coffee in AAA last season. I think he'll start there this year. Most folks on the internet I see saying JP should be traded are also simultaneously saying that Colt should just be the opening day shortstop. I just don't, again, that's MLB The Show brain, I feel like. It doesn't make sense to me, given where they're at with JP. I just don't see how you get rid of him. And it would also be quite the gamble to just slot in a 20-year-old at your opening day shortstop position for a team that has World Series aspirations. Like, I'm very excited about Colt. But again, I feel like it's just video game brain saying, like, yeah, just get rid of JP and start Colt. Easy. Like, come on. Let's be realistic. Now, Colt early in the season as a third baseman, that piques my interest, I will say. However, I would rather try to acquire a legitimate third baseman before falling back on their top prospect, who they probably shouldn't be rushing right now, considering that he's 20 years old. So that's where I stand on that. And now let's get into the free agents who fit their needs, shall we? I was going to start with first base, but now that seems a little silly. But my number one option at first base was Donovan Solano. No, I'm just kidding. I wrote down Josh Naylor as my first base option here. He's the one. He was the one. They got him. Pete Alonso didn't seem feasible. A backup if Naylor wasn't coming back. I know Hearn felt like a potential cheaper, maybe less good, but in the short term, maybe almost as good pivot from Naylor. I also wrote down Munetaka Murakami as a first baseman. I don't really think he's a third baseman. The more I read about him, the more I read about how zero people are confident in his ability to play third base. So his not his upside, his natural landing spot feels like first base or DH. Tantalizing upside for this guy, but incredibly low floor though. Just I've tweeted about this. It does not seem like the player that the manager would take a swing on. And now I'm getting in the third baseman because he's also in the third base conversation. He doesn't feel like a player the manager would take a swing on, or like a non-huge market team would take a swing on. The risk is so high with him. He's 26, so no matter what, you're spending a decent amount of money on him because he's 26 and a free agent. It's just how it goes. You pay for the upside, right? You pay for the upside, and you probably also think and have a player development and coaching plan for him to try to tweak things, like to cut down on the astronomical amount of whiff in his profile. MLB Trade Rumors has him at 8 for 180, which feels like both too many years and too much total money to me. I feel like teams won't offer him that. Like even the Mets, Dodgers, Red Sox, Yankees, all the teams I expect to be in on him, that still feels really high. A good starting point for me feels like a 5-year deal for him and maybe some options for more years after that. And I feel like he gets closer to Josh Naylor money, frankly, which is still a lot for a guy who hasn't come over to Major League Baseball yet. And then maybe some incentives and options strewn throughout the deal. I don't know. What a risk. Like he feels like he could be Carlos Peguero, but then also maybe like Max Muncy or Kyle Schwarber. Like the range feels incredibly big for this guy. I am going to be really excited to watch him not on my team try to develop into a good player, because I think he's going to have some home runs that are just unreal. But he also might come over and in 2026 strike out 45% of the time. So we'll see. No more first baseman talk. Other third baseman after Murakami again. No, not for the Mariners. Alex Bregman's available. Do it. Yeah, do it. Pay the guy. I hate the guy. The whole fan base hates him. Most of baseball hates the guy. I genuinely don't care, honestly. 6 for 160 is what MLB Trade Rumors has him at. I would pay that. Let me tell you right now, I'd pay that. He's a good third baseman. He always has been. I think he will be for at least the next couple of years. Not really that complicated here. I don't think he makes sense given the Mariners' limitations they put on themselves and after getting Naylor, but I think like the Tigers will try to get him and offer him a big deal again like they did last year. I think the Red Sox should be bringing him back if they're at all serious about winning next season. He makes too much sense in a Boston jersey. I think I mentioned this last year when he started playing there. Not only is he good, not only is his profile very well suited for Fenway Park, he just looks like a Red Sox. He just looks like a perfect Red Sox guy that you hate. But I would love to do it. I don't think the Mariners are going to do it. Eugenio Suarez. Have you heard of him? Are you familiar with his work? I feel like collectively the fan base is very okay moving on from him. And I feel like the team is going to move on from him. I've seen zero chatter about them bringing him back at all. And it feels fair to me. I mean, his time here was really bad last season. He had the moment, the grand slam, the 2-homer game. He has the backdrop of being on the 2022 team. But I just don't know if the team does it. 3 for 63 is what MLB Trade Rumors has. Feels like sure, yeah, feels fair. His bat is still there right now. Feels primed to age poorly, given his profile. Ultimate clubhouse guy, like we all know. I'm super curious about what offers he gets. Feels like he won't be a Mariner, though. The other option, and I think this is the one that intrigues me most, that I actually really want the Mariners to do, but God, I don't know if they will. The other notable Japanese position player coming over, Kazuma Akamoto. And he is a very different player from his countryman, Munetaka Murakami. I'd be super interested in exploring this if I'm the Mariners. He is a little bit older. He's 29, but that's kind of the prime age of where you sign a guy like this. And I'm interested because of how the profile differs from Murakami. He's projected for much less money, too, for that reason. There's less upside here, but it feels like there's a higher floor. It feels like he's an actual third baseman. The more I read and listen to him, guys talk about him, it seems like he can play third base, which is good. His profile would really fit the team well, like a high walk, low K rate guy. Even if you factor in the inevitable regression for like his K rate making the transition to Major League Baseball, that just happens. I still think his bat will play. It sounds like people are pretty bullish on his bat being fine in Major League Baseball. MLB Trade Rumors has his projection at 4 for $64 million. I would do that in a heartbeat, really. And it still would be taking a chance. No matter what you're doing, signing any free agent, especially a guy from NPB, it's a risk, especially a position player. Signing a pitcher feels a little bit more of a sure thing from that league. Signing position players feels a little bit more risky than signing a guy who's already played stateside for a while. But I still would absolutely do that. I feel like doing this, signing Okamoto and Naylor, honestly makes more sense than Polanco and Naylor with like team fit wise. Frankly, like signing all three feels optimal for me, but I doubt that's going to happen. I do think third base is just more of a need. Like I said, you have Ben Williamson there, who he can really pick it. That's for sure. The bat is a very big question still. For him being even close to a league average hitter is a big question. Polanco just kind of feels like an awkward fit to me. As much as I want him back, unless they're going to try him at third base again, which, like, don't do that. Then signing a legit third baseman over him, if that's the decision you have to make and you can't get both, it makes more sense. But now that I'm thinking about it, hey, Naylor, Okamoto, Polanco, and you trade for a reliever, call it an offseason, that would be like an A+. That would be awesome. That would be an amazing offseason. But Okamoto, interesting. We'll revisit this because I think the rumors for him, I think will just get going. He just got posted recently, which means I think they got 40 days to sign, and I think teams will be meeting with him at the winter meetings, I would assume. And then he'll probably sign by Christmas is, I think, the timeline here. So really intrigued by this. I'm interested. Letting you know. Other third baseman, there could be like an Arenado trade in here somewhere. I don't know if I'm especially interested in doing that. You know what? Now that I need to talk about Jorge Polanco. I say Jorge Polanco is an awkward fit, and sorry, I'm not going to talk about Arenado. Because Polanco isn't just a DH only, right? He's not going to get paid as a DH only. I'm talking about this through the lens of signing a third baseman over him. I don't know if he's a full-time second baseman either. Like for the Mariners, you want Cole Young to get more run at second base, right? He's one of your top prospects. You need him to get experience at the big league level to improve. You can absolutely afford for him to go back to AAA for a little while, but at some point, you want him to get an extended period of time adjusting to the major leagues. He didn't look great last season, and then he basically didn't play when they needed to win every game down the stretch, and Polanco played second base, and that was fair because Polanco was crushing it, and they needed to win every game. That didn't feel out of the ordinary to me. So then, like, Polanco would be a DH a lot of the time if you want to play Cole Young. But then when Cal gets days off catching, which I think there's going to be more of than last season, potentially, you need Polanco in the field then. So, like, twice a week-ish, are you just benching Cole Young completely in lieu of Polanco? Like, there's also the option that Polanco is just the full-time second base, and then Cole Young is back at AAA to start the season until he proves he can utterly crush the PCL. And then if he does that, I don't know what you do then. I'm not, like, against that option at all. But you have to think that Cole Young is the second base guy of the future in the eyes of the front office, right? barring any big trades this offseason. I just feel like signing a third baseman the only thing it does is prevent more Ben Williamson playing time at the big league level. That's all it does. Bringing back Polanco asks a lot of other questions about the roster, or begs a lot of other questions about the roster, I should say. And so that's why it's more of an awkward fit. And that's my take on that. Other position players of note here. I mentioned Willie Castro for a utility player. He's really the utility guy in free agency. I really wouldn't be against bringing him. Like, if they could manage to do, Okamoto and Willie Castro. Oh, yeah. Oh, I love that. Oh, that would be great. But Dylan Moores, man. Dylan Moores don't grow on trees. Like, I cannot stress enough how valuable it is to be able to conjure up a guy like that within your organization. Hey, maybe they'll pull some out of their ass like that next season, and Leo Rivas can play every position in 2026 and walks 15% of the time and steals some bags. Who knows? Maybe they'll do it. But other position players, before we get into some of the pitching and trying not to have this episode go a really long time, Kyle Tucker, pay him. Do it, cowards. They won't. But how cool would that be? The MLB trade rumors estimate for him is 11 years, $400. That feels like too much. That feels like too much money. Not that he's not worth it. I think Kyle Tucker's a great player. I think he was hurt last season and had something wrong in his mechanics and in his mind. And I think he's a really, really good player who is worth a lot of money. I just think since there's no other player quite like him in free agency this year, teams are going to be able to lowball him a little bit. And so he can't like pit himself up against another player. Right? Like 400 just feels like a lot. My official Kyle Tucker prediction is a decade, like 10 years, 350 feels a little bit better to me. People are saying Dodgers, Yankees, Phillies, Giants here with Kyle Tucker. Mariners, sign him. Do it. They're not going to. Other guys, Bo Bichette, who is the second best player, according to MLB trade rumors. And they have him 8 years, $208 million. All four of their experts have him going back to the Blue Jays, and I would agree. That feels like the industry consensus. This feels not that Toronto is going to bring him back. They need to. They need to do this. After going to the World Series and extending Vlad already and seeing what he did, and then what Bichette did, they've been together so long. This is one that will pay you back off the field alone if it doesn't pay you back on the field. If you're looking at that from a business and ownership standpoint here, you sign Bo Bichette to a long free agent deal to keep him and Vladdy on the team together, and it's just something you have to do. He's a super interesting free agent, I think. I think he's going to go back to the Blue Jays, but if there wasn't this narrative around him sticking with his buddy Vlad and the Jays and trying to run it back what they did last season, how special a season that was, it would be incredibly interesting to see what would happen. He's not going to get paid as a shortstop, I don't think. He shouldn't either. Like, he'll want to be. His bat is awesome, but he's not a shortstop. Like, he should be a second baseman. I don't think there's no chance the Mariners sign him. He's too expensive, and again, I don't think the Blue Jays are letting him go anywhere else. The Mariners signing him as a second baseman would be awesome, though. Genuinely, would be amazing. I saw some people say sign him as a third baseman. That makes no sense to me. He is a very limited range shortstop, which leads you to believe that, hey, maybe third base could work out. Less range at third base. Don't have to cover as much ground. He doesn't really have a strong arm, so like that doesn't make sense. Second base feels like his home. Kyle Schwarber, also a free agent. I love him. I love Kyle Schwarber. One of my favorite baseball players. Maybe ever. I just love him as an entity in baseball. But this doesn't make sense for the Mariners at all. Not really even a little bit. Cal will continue to DH a pretty healthy amount this season. Schwarber should be nowhere near the field. And Schwarber is like a 162 game DH. So you're not benching him for Cal Raleigh. Despite how good Cal was last year, you're still not going to bench him for Cal Raleigh, which means Cal would DH less, sit on the bench more, Harry Ford plays more. It just doesn't make sense. Other guys, Trent Grisham, no for the Mariners. They have a center fielder. He's going to want to get paid as a center fielder too, not a corner guy. Glaber, no, I don't think so. Ha-Seong Kim, can he play third base? Feels like a potential bargain bin third baseman who is an interesting bat at the very least, you know? In the interest of time, we'll move on to pitching. Starters, like I said, the top end of the market does not really make sense for them to shop in at all in free agency. They both shouldn't because they have enough top end guys now who are making less money and they just don't have the money to do it, it feels like. So guys like Cease, Framber, Amai, Suarez, King, Gallen, Woodruff, all those guys just would not track for this team to try to sign. That doesn't make any sense. You know who I would shop at the top end of the market for in the trade market? Tarek Skubal. Oh man, what I would do for 1 year of Tarek Skubal, let me tell you. Ugh. I may do a whole episode dedicated to just the pitching staff in the offseason because they do really need pitching depth. I'm also a little worried about the pitching staff going in next season as is right now. But then also trying to acquire viable pitching depth when you already have 5 big league starters penciled in for 2026 is going to be a tough task, I think. Huge caveat, again, if any of those guys are traded, that changes everything. Like, let's say they put together a Skubal package, hypothetically. I imagine Bryce, Kirby, Logan, one of those 3 would 100% be in the deal. I would doubt Castillo for the salary concerns, and then Wu, I think, is probably untouchable for them. Even though I'd entertain Wu in a Skubal deal, just thinking about that right now. The staff as a whole is tricky. I'll probably do a whole pod on it. But starters, I'm not going to talk about. Relievers is where they'll need to look into free agency and trades, I think, like I said. First off, it is a well-known fact. Paying a reliever a lot of money in free agency is really never worth it by like a dollars per production perspective, really. The big teams, though, they keep doing it and will continue to do it. I don't think that's going to change. It's just kind of something you need to do if you're those teams to take a chance to get like a world-ending reliever in free agency. But if you're crunching the numbers, it's really never a good idea. But when it works, it works. Just needed to say that. Edwin Diaz will be he's the big guy. Relief pitching this offseason. He'll probably go to a big market. I think same with Devin Williams, honestly, and I would avoid Devin Williams, frankly. I think he got unlucky last season, but for what his projected price is going to be, I just don't know, man. Like I'm worried about his fastball a lot. Other guys, Robert Suarez is probably the other like elite, you could say, guy who's available that the Mariners won't shop for. And then here are the guys I think would be reasonable for the Mariners, but still too expensive for them to try to acquire. Even though they should entertain a deal like this if they aren't cowardly, like I claim that they are. Prove me wrong. Brad Keller, estimate 3 for $36 million. Raisel Iglesias, 2 for $26. Ryan Helsley, 2 for $24. I think I would be super duper over Ryan Helsley if I was the Mariners. You get him on the cheap right now than you would have been able to get him, or what you think you would get him for going in 2025 because he had a down year. I still think he has some elite innings left in him, and 2 for $24 does not seem unreasonable in the slightest for him. Kyle Finnegan, 2 for 20. I doubt it. And then the interesting one here, Nick Martinez. 2 for 25 is what MLB Trade Rumors has him at. I'm putting a pin in that because he feels like a super interesting Swiss Army solution maybe for the starting pitching depth and a reliever. Like I'm noticing that. I'm watching that. You remember that too, listener. I'm thinking about that one. Now, guys I think could actually be feasible for the Mariners. Luke Weaver. Trade Rumors has him at 1 for $18 million. I don't think he gets $18 million a year. I think he'll go for less than that. But then also a 1-year deal paying a really high amount feels more like what this team could do than giving multiple years for like a Brad Keller 3 for 36. It's less yearly money, but they feel more likely to give out a 1-year big deal because then if it goes wrong, off the books at the end of the season. Other guys here, Tyler Rogers, 2 for 18 is his projection. I would love that. I think he's mad underrated. I love Tyler Rogers. He's also a submarine pitcher, which is amazing. 2 for 18. If the Mariners did that and signed one more guy, a third or second baseman, oh yeah, sign me up. That would be awesome. Pete Fairbanks, 2 for 18, same thing. Do it. Yes. Another guy who's maybe lost a little bit of his eliteness, but I think he still has some left in the tank. Gregory Soto is on here too. 2 for 16. Satisfies the lefty requirement. Would be interesting. I don't know. I don't know if they pay a reliever at all. I feel like it's more likely they trade for one, given how Jerry Dipoto likes to do business, but we'll see. Final 2 names I wanted to mention before I actually move on to maybe some trades they could do. I think Jerry could be into either of these guys. Sean Armstrong is the first guy. He's 35. I also found out his birthday is September 11th when I was looking into this. But coming off a really nice year with the Rangers, a team will sign him for sure. Because of his age, he's not going to command more than a 1-year deal and probably not like a ton of money. It'd be interesting. And then Pierce Johnson, similar age. He's 34, not too expensive, solid year with the Braves. There's also probably like 30 other veteran relievers on the market that would be fine in my eyes, but I do still think they need another dude, Another dude. What they needed at the deadline this season, they still kind of need that. But then they could do it via trade, and what else could they trade? Who else could they trade for? Brendan Donovan's name has been thrown out around a lot recently. There's a particular Cardinals account on the internet that I think is actually delusional. I think Brendan Donovan's a good player. I don't think he's as good as these people think he is, but he's good. The Cardinals are looking to deal him. He's only ever really been a good hitter in his MLB career. He's entering ARB, still has plenty of years of control. He can play multiple positions, second base, third base, corner, outfield. Really helpful to any team, basically. Could be very helpful to the Mariners. He could play second base, third base, corner, outfield. Like I said, places they need good players to play, right? I can see this happening. And again, like I mentioned, if they trade for Brendan Donovan, I need Jojo Romero in the deal too, the lefty reliever. I need him. But Brendan Donovan would make a ton of sense, I think. I don't think it'd be my first option, but I would like it. And I don't think it would take a ton. Him and Jojo Romero, I think, if both of them are in the deal, I would give up Durangelo or Ryan Sloan solely for one of those guys. Straight up. I think that's good value for both teams. Maybe it's a Michael Arroyo and Michael Morales trade, or Teddy McGraw and Felon Celestin, perhaps, could get that deal done. We'll see. But the belle of the ball, I should say the belle of the trading ball this offseason is without a doubt Ketel Marte. Former Mariner Ketel Marte. Jerry, are you listening? You should get this done expeditiously, my friend. He is under team control for a very long time on a very reasonable deal. And more importantly, he's very, very good at baseball. He's been unreal the past few seasons. It's entirely possible his best seasons are in the very near rear view. However, that doesn't mean he's falling off a cliff. I think he's got plenty of good to great years left in him. Get this done. Right your past wrongs here with the D-backs. Again, you already did it with Geno. You did it with Geno. And that was small potatoes comparing to righting your past wrongs. This is like, historically wise, this is, I'd have to go look at my chart that I'm in the process of making, but I think the worst trade he's ever made by net WAR, I think it's up there, at least. I think it's top 3, because he's just been so damn good for the D-backs. This is the trade. This is where you deal from your farm system riches. This is who you do it for. And I think to start the deal, you need to include Cole Young. And I think that's a good start. As pretty much like an MLB ready or close to MLB ready second baseman who's a respectable prospect. You probably need to include one of Sloan or Sinche in here. And then a high upside, maybe riskier guy like Felton Celestin. Let's start with Young, Sloan, and Felton and go from there. That feels like a fine deal for the D-backs and the Mariners. D-backs might ask for more than that because of how valuable Ketel's contract is. So maybe it's Young, Sloan, Felton, and like Ty Pete, perchance. I would do that right now. I would get on the phone and I would do that deal right now. So that'll be interesting. Ketel, the D-backs, they're in a really weird spot, I think. They're not forced to trade him. Again, he's on a good deal. But they could, just by dangling him, I think they could get a killer return that could help their future a lot with this deal. So that's definitely one to watch. The other reported potential trade here that's very tantalizing is Steven Kwan. Really intrigues me as well. I would love him in the corner outfield for this team. I already mentioned this, didn't I? Yeah, I already mentioned this in this podcast. What it would have to include. I think Canzone would have to be a part of this deal, or Rayleigh, but I think Canzone probably would be more valuable to the Guardians with him being cheaper and just coming off the 300 plate appearance sample of him being great at the plate last year. Steven Kwan would be an awesome addition to throw right into the top of this lineup, frankly. It would be awesome. We'll see if that gets done. I don't think any of these trades are going to happen out of nowhere. I think we'll get more rumors, and I don't think teams are pressed right now to get trades done. It's super early in the offseason, so I feel like Ketel and Steven Kwan are probably the biggest guys who've been we're trying to trade them. Brendan Donovan's in there too. All of those guys would make sense for the Mariners, but they also make sense for a lot of other teams. Most teams would want to acquire Ketel Marte if they want to win baseball games next season. You don't get a second baseman like that too often. And you don't trade a second baseman like that too often and get the retrade for him. Opportunity does not come around very often, Jerry. So do it. Right your wrongs, buddy. And then if they do choose to add another leverage reliever through trade instead of free agency, which again feels like the way more likely thing for them to do as the Mariners, there's a lot of names. There are so many relievers to trade for at all times, so I don't want to keep you for too long. So I'm just going to say 2 names at you. Honestly, actually, I'm just going to say 1 name. I've already talked about Jojo Romero. I like him a lot, and he makes a ton of sense. He's a lefty. He'd be a leverage lefty. Add Donovan in there. Bam, we already talked about that. The other one, another leverage lefty, I think could be and probably will be traded this offseason, is Garrett Clevenger of the Rays. He is in arbitration currently, making decent money for an arbitration reliever. He's a good reliever. I'm sure the Rays will be willing to trade him. And Jerry, he loves a trade with the Rays. He has made, hold on, let me consult my chart. He has made 18 trades with the Rays in his tenure, 18 out of 192 as the Mariners' president of baseball operations. And I like Garrett Clevenger a lot, man. I like him. He's a lefty, obvious fit, would really help elongate the pen, provide another trustworthy lefty to complement Gabe Spire. That would make a ton of sense. But again, there's so many relief pitchers that could be traded. It's kind of a pointless endeavor to go name by name and figure out who would be the most likely. But those two I really like. If they choose to not go a well-paid free agency reliever route, I'm sure there will be many a minor league deal handed out to veteran relief pitchers who will be potentially in AAA to start the season or get cut during spring training. Every team signs guys like that, but I think they really do need to look for another solid reliever, and they definitely need another lefty with Spire, because I just don't think there's another good option within the organization right now. And that being said, I think you need Gregory Santos to do something next year. I talked about this in the last pod, him and Troy Taylor. You need one of those guys next year to actually be a dude, to hopefully limit the amount you're going to have to try to add both at the deadline and right now. God, I hope Gregory Santos is good next season. But then I still think they need a lefty. So Gregory Santos doesn't fit that requirement. But God, I hope he's good. And that's all pretty much it for this podcast. It was a long one. There were a lot of names to go over. I think my plan is sound. Just go Naylor, Okamoto, Polanco. The Naylor, Okamoto, Polanco gambit. Trade for Clevenger, bam, done. Off-season, wrap a bow on it, A+. Go into next season as the AL West champion favorites. And done. Donezo. I am over the moon that they already brought back Naylor. November 16th, they brought him back. That is amazing. They genuinely, hats off to the team. It wasn't just eyewash in them saying it was a priority. They freaking did it immediately. This is so early to hand out a free agent deal of that magnitude for the Seattle Mariners. This is going to blow the position player record of Mitch Garver out of the freaking water. It's not going to top the Robbie Ray deal, so it's not going to be the most, but I think this will come in comfortably at second highest free agent contract in Mariners history. It's got to. I say that with a question mark, but I'm just psyched about it. So Josh Naylor, 5 more years. What a deal. And that was it for this first foray into building the team for 2026 podcasts. There will be more. I do want to do, like I said, one kind of just on the pitching staff and where they're at and my concerns and what they could do to address them right now, but that'll come later in the off season. But appreciate you listening this far. If you have, as always, I really do appreciate all of you who listen to all of these episodes all the way through. It's crazy that you do, but I commend you for it. But let me know if you think my ideas are too crazy, or if I was too mean to the rich people who own the team, calling them cowards. Let me know. But of course, have a great rest of your week. Go Josh Naylor and go Mariners.